The United Arab Emirates isn't just a powerful global trade hub. It is really cementing its status as one of the fastest growing pharmaceutical markets in the Middle East. I mean, growing at an exponential clip.
Absolutely.
This strategic location makes it such an essential gateway, a high-stakes opportunity, really, for global manufacturers looking to access the lucrative GCC and MENA regions.
Mm-hmm.
But, that opportunity requires passing through a gate, and that gate is tightly regulated.
Oh.
We're talking stringent adherence to new and complex rules. Welcome to DD-Reg Knowledge Capsule.
And that strategic approach is exactly what we need to unpack today. The path to successful market entry in the UAE, well, it requires strict adherence to regulations set by MOHAP and the newer EDE.
Great.
We are talking about stringent, multi-layered checks. Safety, quality, full compliance at every single stage of product authorization. From the manufacturing side audit right down to the bilingual label translation. Our mission in this deep dive is, hopefully, to give you a clear shortcut, a high-level guide to understanding those standards and complex processes quickly.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this. If we're looking at the fundamental structure, maybe start there. What are the primary rules governing this very lucrative market? We probably can't dive into the 6 steps until we understand the regulatory foundation itself.
Makes sense. We start with the core legal framework, which has recently been updated. The main law governing pharmaceutical establishments, registration, import-export, pricing, manufacturing, distribution. It's the Federal Decree of Law number 38.
Okay, Law 38.
Yes, and this law is pretty new. Became effective January 2nd, 2025. It's important because it represents a large-scale consolidation and, frankly, modernization effort. It centralizes the authority needed to regulate complex, modern therapies that, well, didn't even exist 10 years ago.
Right, right. And within that structure, we have these 2 major regulatory bodies.
Yeah.
I think this is often the first point of confusion for manufacturers, especially those used to dealing with just a single national authority. So we need to distinguish them clearly, the established ministry and the new federal authority.
Absolutely. The newer, highly specialized entity is the Emirates Drug Establishment, or EDE, established back in 2023.
Okay.
Think of the EDE as the scientific judge, maybe? It's the federal authority specifically focused on the technical scientific regulation of pharmaceuticals and medical goods.
Got it.
Its responsibilities are highly technical: clinical, non-clinical testing, pharmacovigilance oversight, and the final drug approvals. Very science-focused.
And then you still have the Ministry of Health and Prevention, MHAP.
Right.
So if the EDE is the scientific judge, MOHAP is maybe the gatekeeper for local operations. Is that fair?
That's a good way to put it. They remain the primary agency handling facility licensing, product import permissions, and the overall drug registration process in the UAE, sort of the operational side. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, successful market entry depends entirely on navigating the overlap between these 2. It's crucial.
How so?
Well, you might satisfy MOHAP on your operational setup, your local agent agreement. Everything looks good there. But if the EDE, the scientific judge, rejects your bioequivalence data, for example, the product goes nowhere.
Ah, okay.
The creation of the EDE really allows the UAE to fast-track the review of novel therapies, complex biologics, things like that, separate from the bulk of, let's say, more traditional registration processes handled by MOHAP.
That distinction really clarifies why the documentation requirements are so comprehensive then. Okay, so this brings us to the actual mechanics of authorization. Here's where it gets really interesting for people listening. The step-by-step pathway to getting approval. Let's walk through the 6 crucial stages, starting with strategy.
Sounds good.
Step 1 is pre-application and planning. This is your homework phase, really. You absolutely must define your product type. Is it a conventional chemical entity, a biologic, a natural source product? Because that definition dictates your regulatory track. Critically, you should confirm if reference authorities, like the FDA or EMA, have already approved your dossier. Having those approvals can really streamline things later. What are we submitting here? Things like manufacturing data, QC reports, and absolutely critical stability data.
Right. And moving from that planning into the organizational setup, step 2 is the registration of the manufacturing process and sites. This means registering the actual manufacturing facility with MHAP, or potentially the EDE.
Okay.
And the reach here is broad. It applies not just to conventional medicines, but also to herbal products and even general sale list, or GSL, items. The required submission includes your current GMP certificates, manufacturing licenses, and the site master file, the SMF.
Okay, so site's approved. Then step 3 is marketing authorization registration. This involves establishing the marketing authorization holder, the MAH. Now, for most global manufacturers, the MAH will be outside the UAE, which means there's a non-negotiable requirement. You must appoint a licensed local agent, one who is recognized by a MOHAP or EDE.
That's key.
Yeah, it isn't just a formality, is it? This agent holds actual legal responsibility. So this step requires formalized legal records, agency agreements, all that jazz.
Exactly. And once those foundational organizational steps are secured, the second half of the process is really about the submission and evaluation. So step 4 is the dossier submission.
Right.
This submission must adhere to the Standardized Electronic Common Technical Document Format, ECTD. The standardized layout just ensures regulators can easily navigate all the technical information.
Makes sense.
Now, there's a specific requirement here. For natural or herbal products, you must provide additional data, things to verify origin, purity, safety, especially regarding any banned substances. And crucially, all documents submitted, they need to be legalized and authenticated. And you must include precise Arabic translations of labels, and often product samples for analysis too.
Wait, hang on. On step 4, how much detail does Arabic translations require? Is it just the text, or are they looking at the exact artwork? You mentioned pitfalls earlier.
Yeah.
This sounds like one.
It definitely is. They're reviewing the exact artwork. The regulator is ensuring complete consistency across the 2 mandatory languages, English and Arabic.
Oh.
So if the Arabic label text itself is approved, but then the physical printed packaging artwork shifts the health warning slightly or uses a different font size, that's grounds for a hold.
Wow, okay. Precision is key.
It really is. It's a precision compliance point that global teams, well, they often underestimate.
Got it.
So that takes us to step 5, the technical evaluation. This is the critical and often lengthy stage. The MOHAP and ED technical committees, they rigorously evaluate the submitted dossier. Quality, safety, efficacy.
Yahoo checks.
Exactly. If the dossier involves, say, a generic drug, this is where they might request additional testing. Sometimes time-consuming stuff like bioequivalence studies to prove the generic performs identically to the reference product.
Right.
They also pay really specific attention to stability studies. They need to verify the product holds up under the intense heat and, frankly, varied storage conditions you find in the Gulf climate.
Which finally leads, hopefully, to step 6, market registration. Once all those technical and legal conditions have been fully satisfied, this leads to the issuance of the Certificate of Registration or Marketing Authorization. That's your green light to begin importing and distributing.
That's the goal.
So that's the 6-step process laid out. Now, you mentioned the timeline earlier, 6 to 12 months for product registration, which on paper sounds pretty efficient for a major market. But where are the hidden costs or, the typical bureaucratic bottlenecks that might stall that process in reality?
Yeah, good question. The initial company registration, which has to be done first, that's relatively quick, usually just 1 to 3 months. Fees are typically between 5,000 and 10,000 AED.
Okay.
Product registration is, as you said, generally 6 to 12 months, and fees can range from about 10,000 to 20,000 AED per product. The largest bottlenecks, they almost always occur in step 5, that technical evaluation phase.
Makes sense.
If the regulators request additional bioequivalence data or more stability studies, that can easily add 3, maybe even 6 months to the timeline. Just like that.
Oof.
However, to your point on efficiency, the authorities do offer a valuable fast-track registration option. It's specifically for life-saving or critical care products, which is a huge help in those cases.
That's good to know.
And beyond the initial approval, look, continuous compliance is absolutely non-negotiable, particularly around labeling and ongoing oversight. Labeling requirements are strict. Must be bilingual, Arabic, and English. Must include specific details like batch and registration numbers, full ingredient lists, required health warnings, and crucially, GS1 compliant barcodes or QR codes for immediate traceability.
That need for immediate machine-readable traceability, that goes right into the heart of ongoing compliance and pharmacovigilance, doesn't it?
It really does. Ongoing compliance requires continuous pharmacovigilance, PV. That means timely submission of safety updates, adverse event reports. Manufacturers have to establish a PV system basically immediately.
Right.
This includes appointing a qualified person for pharmacovigilance, the QPPV, who acts as the central legally mandated point of contact for all safety reporting.
And they need to be local.
That can be a sticking point, yes. We'll touch on that. And remember, MOHAP conducts regular GMP audits and inspections at manufacturing sites, both domestic and international. Non-compliance here can lead to heavy fines, product bans, even license revocation. They take it very seriously.
Okay, so since this deep dive is meant to save people time and headaches, let's talk about those common pitfalls. These are absolutely critical for any manufacturer planning market entry to know about and avoid. What are the top failure points you see?
The primary failure point, time and again, is the incomplete or inadequate dossier. Simple as that sometimes. Often, for generics, the bioequivalence data might be technically okay for other markets, but it fails to meet the specific stringent thresholds of the EDE here.
Ah,
Or the submitted stability data just isn't sufficient to prove the product survives Gulf shipping and storage conditions over its full shelf life. That's a big one.
okay, dossier completeness. What else?
The second major pitfall is the one you flagged earlier, inconsistent labeling and translation issues. We have seen significant delays simply because the final printed artwork, the actual physical box, didn't precisely align with the approved Arabic translation layout.
Even minor differences.
Even minor ones. That discrepancy, however small it seems, stops the clock on the review.
Wow. Okay, so dossier labels. We've also heard about critical delays related to just getting the personnel set up right.
Exactly. We see frequent delays in the PV officer setup and approval. The whole PV plan evaluation might be immediately postponed if the key PPV, that dedicated safety officer, isn't a local UAE resident or maybe lacks the specific credentials required by MOHAP.
So that one personnel requirement can freeze the entire compliance process.
It absolutely can. And finally, watch out for incorrect product classification. Submitting, say, a specialized medical item under the wrong regulatory track, maybe classifying it incorrectly as a simple general sale list item that can lead to significant delays, often forces a complete restart of that part of the submission.
Got it. Avoid those pitfalls. Now, looking forward, are there recent advancements? How is the UAE modernizing this whole process?
Yeah, it's worth noting the UAE is rapidly modernizing things through digitization. The goal is definitely to make things faster and more efficient, provided, of course, your internal systems can keep up with their digital pace.
Okay. How are they achieving that digitization? What does that look like in practice?
Well, submissions are now made much easier via online portals. You've got the MHAP e-services portal, for instance, and they're utilizing the UAE Pass digitization mode for secure access. Makes things smoother.
Right.
That focus on pharmacovigilance is also being digitized. Things like mandatory adverse drug reaction, or ADR, reporting via mobile apps like UAE Radar. This just speeds up safety signal detection tremendously.
Interesting.
We're also seeing much more stringent requirements now for the purity and hygiene of natural and herbal products. Increased attention paid to screening for banned substances, really moving the standard much closer to conventional drug standards for those.
Okay.
But perhaps the largest advancement is the intense focus on supply chain integrity and traceability.
You're talking about TAPMIN, right? This system sounds fantastic for security, for auditing, but for a global manufacturer, integrating GS1 compliant barcodes across all packaging lines, that sounds like a massive IT and operational undertaking. Is this a hard, fast requirement, or are there phase-ins?
It is a hard requirement. For all registered drugs, TAPMIN is the national system used to monitor full drug traceability. The goal is ensuring every single drug unit can be tracked from the manufacturer right to the patient.
Full track and trace.
Exactly. It ensures supply chain integrity, verifies temperature controls where needed, allows for full auditing, and that system relies entirely on those mandated unique GS1 compliant barcodes and QR codes printed on the secondary packaging.
Some manufacturers have to adapt.
They do. It requires manufacturers to change their production lines, their software, to ensure compliance before they even submit the final registration documents. It's an upfront requirement.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaway here for you, the listener, whether you're a manufacturer or a regulatory professional. Success in the UAE requires far more than just having good quality data. It really demands strategic regulatory expertise, strong local partnerships to navigate that IDEMA-HAP split effectively, and increasingly the capability to fully integrate these digital compliance requirements, like TAPMIN. Get that right. And you're positioned perfectly to access the massive gateway that is the GCC and MENA pharmaceutical markets.
Precisely. It really is about proactive compliance, strategic planning, and understanding that the UAE is setting a new technologically driven standard for market entry in the region, which I think raises an important question for you to consider.
Sure.
Considering this critical reliance on mandated GS1 compliant barcodes and QR codes for full drug traceability, that TAPMIN system, how fundamentally must global manufacturers change their internal supply chain monitoring protocols just to satisfy UAE market entry? And, maybe more broadly, could this robust digitized system become the default regional standard across the entire MENA area, requiring widespread operational compliance shifts for everyone wanting to play in this region?
A really complex question, definitely something to think about for a market that clearly rewards strategic preparation. Something for you to mull over as you plan your operational and regulatory next moves. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.